I died in the year he hated me most, unable to bear his hatred any longer. I chose to end my own life. When the funeral home handed my ashes to Holden Kingsley, he patted the urn and showed the only smile of the day to Filthy. She deserves to be scattered to the winds. With a turn of his hand, the urn clattered to the ground. Of course, he believed I had killed his white moonlight. He had stayed by my side for years, waiting for this very moment. He walked away, stepping over my ashes, only to return not long after, begging the funeral director to give me back to him. After a year of torment under Holden Kingsley, I finally died. I took advantage of his inattention, secretly slitting my wrists in the bathtub. The blood filled the tub, mirroring the scene from the day I miscarried after learning the real reason he married me. Well done dying. Holden clapped his hands and laughed, his bright eyes turning crimson. As he laughed, tears began to fall. I thought he must be remembering his long-lost white moonlight. 6 years ago, she died in a car accident, and her heart was transplanted into me. Holden always believed that accident was premeditated, that I was responsible for his beloved's death, so he deliberately got close to me and subjected me to endless torment after our marriage. He even planned to make my whole family pay with their lives. He had bided his time for years, rising from a poor boy to a prominent figure in Harbor City. Once he gained enough power to rival my family, he bared his fangs. He was like a mad dog, relentlessly pursuing everyone in the Sterling family. And today, it was all over, because I died on the very night he was about to strike. Holden's reaction to news of my death was terrifyingly calm. He simply told his assistant to send me to the funeral home immediately. The next time he saw me, I was just a handful of ashes in a small box. Give my sister back to me. The moment we stepped out of the funeral home entrance, my doting older brother threw a punch at Holden's handsome face, but he was quickly subdued by security, collapsing to the ground in utter breakdown. Your sister is right here. Holden patted the urn, then placed a foot on my brother's back. Too filthy. She deserves to be scattered to the winds. With that, he overturned the palm-sized box, sending ashes floating into the sky like dust. I knew Holden hated me, but I never realized it had become this pathological. As my ashes scattered far and wide, I couldn't help but cry. I had loved him sincerely for 2 years, only to receive such an ending. Holden's expensive leather shoe lifted from my brother, his face still etched with a bone-chilling sneer. Since you love her so much, why doesn't the whole Sterling family join her? So even my death hadn't stopped his desire to destroy my family. My brother slumped on the ground, tears and mucus streaking his face. You'll regret this. You will. I will never regret it. Holden walked away from the funeral home, treading on my ashes. My brother shed all the pride of being the eldest Sterling son, crying uncontrollably. I'm sorry. I repeated it 100 times in my heart. The tears wouldn't stop. I felt my ashes drifting to forests and mountains. A tiny strand fell into a stray dog's bowl and was eaten. Some landed in mountain streams, on trees. The last strand clung to his lapel and the soles of his shoes, accompanying him back to the place we once shared. Our marital home was a villa halfway up the mountain. When we first married, I thought he chose this serene, beautiful place for my convalescence because he knew I was frail. It wasn't until I gradually lost contact with the outside world that I realized this was also part of his plan. After all, I was the most cherished youngest daughter of the Sterling family. Only by isolating me from the world could Holden's plan succeed more completely. His revenge would be more meaningful. I followed Holden into the villa. There were no servants. I had managed everything myself. He paused for a second while changing his shoes, then scoffed and quickly put them on. Amelia Sterling, you really did well by dying. I pursed my lips, angrily stepping on his shadow as I followed him. Holden, you bastard. You still hate me even after I'm dead. Holden opened the fridge and poured himself a drink. As he put the bottle down, his eyes caught the note on the refrigerator door. Honey, I made the fresh cream puffs you love today. Remember to eat them. Dated December 28th, the night before I died. Holden's eyes darkened slightly. He crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. He didn't even glance at my puffs. To please him, I had even shaped the puffs into hearts. He used to love them, but now he couldn't be bothered. It seemed his fondness for my cooking was just another lie. For some reason, Holden seemed sullen after seeing that note. He lay on the sofa for a long time, staring at the butterfly chandelier overhead. If he could see supernatural things, he'd probably see me sitting on the butterfly's wing, watching him. I bought this with him before our wedding. I loved it, miraculously. He was also enamored with this butterfly chandelier. Back then, I was overjoyed that we finally agreed on something. not knowing his beloved was named Vanessa. I once asked him about his first love when I was feeling jealous after marriage. He lay on the sofa, my head pillowed on his arm, staring blankly at the ceiling. He said, "My first love," turned into a butterfly and flew away. My heart clenched, fueling a greater desire to devote myself to him. I kissed his eyes, comforting him over and over. "Can I be your butterfly? My parents say I'm the happiest person in our family. I promise I can make you happy." He didn't speak, just held me, trembling. He listened to the heartbeat in my chest. His hands gripped me tightly, even though it hurt. I didn't tell him to let go, because I mistook his suppressed hatred for being moved by me. Falling in love robbed me of my ability to discern right from wrong. No wonder I ended up destroyed by him later. After about an hour, Holden finally decided to do something else. I didn't plan to follow him, but it seemed I could only stay within a meter of him. I stood outside the bathroom door, listening to the water run. A minute later, the sound of bottles and cans falling made my blood run cold. I flung the door open and saw Holden, his eyes bloodshot, facing the crimson scene in the bathroom. A twisted expression finally appeared on his face. My death had been sudden. There was no one else in the villa. If not for Holden's assistant returning for a document, my death wouldn't have been discovered so quickly. Only a dozen hours passed from my death to being reduced to ashes. Everyone overlooked the fact that the place where I died hadn't been cleaned, so the bathroom Holden saw now was a veritable crime scene. "Amelia!" He roared into the air. The shout almost made my soul leave my body again. "No need to be so loud," I grumbled to myself, after my body went limp. I had sunk into the bathtub. It wasn't that dirty outside. Couldn't he clean it himself? But Holden obviously couldn't hear me and showed no intention of cleaning. Trembling with rage, he immediately found his phone to call his assistant, not even noticing when the bathroom door had opened. "Find me another place immediately. I'm moving out tomorrow." After saying this, he smashed his phone violently, shattering it to pieces. I had never seen Holden so frenzied. Close call. I patted my non-existent heart, trying to calm myself. After Holden left, I masochistically crouched down and stirred the bloody water in the tub. This was the second time I'd seen such a scene. The first time was when I accidentally learned Holden married me only for revenge. Disoriented, I had slipped and fallen into the tub. Blood flowed everywhere, snuffing out the tiny life I had just discovered existed. The second time was when I killed myself. I lost consciousness early, letting the blood flow freely. I never thought I'd witness such a ghastly sight firsthand one day. "Holden," I looked at his retreating back. "If you ever find out her death wasn't my fault, will you regret it?" Holden and I spent an excruciating night in that house. The next morning, he woke early, changed clothes, and walked to the back hill. I heard him call his assistant, ordering everything here to be cleared out. He didn't want to see anything that belonged to me. Actually, I didn't think Holden would leave this villa, because his first love, the white moonlight who turned into a butterfly and flew away, was buried on the back hill of our villa. "Nessa, she's dead." Holden crouched before the grave, fingers gently tracing the tombstone. A photo on the stone showed a sweet-faced girl with a lively, cheerful smile. "Sadly, her life ended at 20. I finally avenged you." He spoke obsessively, then zoned out again for a long time. For some reason, Holden zoned out a lot now, as if he'd been emptied out, soul gone. Of course, I didn't think this had anything to do with me. I guessed it was just the emptiness after achieving his long-sought revenge. He had lived off his hatred for me for years. Now that I was dead, it was natural for him to be a bit slow. Holden didn't leave the back hill until the sun rose. When he returned, he didn't enter the villa but went straight to the garage, got in a car, and left. When I saw our destination was a shabby apartment building on the city's outskirts, I knew what Holden intended to do. Following his memory, he knocked on the miller's door. Unfortunately, no one answered. Holden tried a few more times, getting no response. He knocked more forcefully, his impatience showing. This time, he disturbed a neighbor. "What the?" The neighbor's voice cut off, staring in disbelief at the once poor boy. He looked like a big boss now, so the neighbor swallowed his curse. "Where are they?" Holden asked coldly. "Them?" The neighbor looked disdainful, rolling his eyes. "Use their daughter's blood money to live the good life." Holden frowned slightly, as if he could no longer stand their blunt, crude words. "Where did they go?" "Dunno." "Why are you asking me? Who are you?" The neighbor began sizing Holden up unhappily. "I'm their daughter's boyfriend." "Oh ho." The neighbor's eyes sparkled with gossip. "You're the boyfriend old Miller fooled? Pity little Vanessa was born into the wrong family. traded off by her greedy parents just like that. My heart sank, and I immediately looked at Holden's face. Holden's eyes were wide with fury. After a long moment, he gritted out, "Traded?" On the drive back, Holden drove faster than ever before. His face was darker than ever. I had always believed his white moonlight's death wasn't my fault, but how much else was hidden, I truly didn't know. Holden sped all the way, finally stopping at the gates of my family home. The once grand Sterling estate looked much more desolate. Holden didn't even see a single servant on his way in. "Holden Kingsley, you dare show your face?" My brother grabbed his lapel and swung. "Get off." Holden looked like wrath incarnate. "I don't want to fight today. Tell me, how did Amelia Sterling get that heart?" "Huh, how?" My brother laughed madly, tossing all caution. "From your old flame, of course." With that, he threw another punch at Holden. The two men, eyes red, wrestled on the ground. I stood by, helpless, unable to intervene or pull them apart. "Enough." A familiar voice rang in my ears, and tears immediately fell. My father had aged greatly, his voice much more weathered. He threw the surgical contract from years ago and a donation contract I'd never seen before in Holden's face. Amelia's heart was obtained through legal donation channels. I gave the family a 10 million thank you gift afterward. "All the paperwork is here. What else do you want to know?" "Impossible." Holden's hands trembled as he flipped through the documents, his face growing paler. I stood nervously by, unsure how to face such a reversal. Being innocent, of course I was glad, but who could compensate me for the suffering of the past year? "I don't believe it. I don't believe it." Holden seemed to lose his mind, muttering only this. A moment later, his phone rang, timely as ever. "Mr. Kingsley?" His assistant sounded hesitant on the other end. We found Mrs. Kingsley's prenatal exam report. My pregnancy was known only to me and the doctor. Back then, my relationship with Holden wasn't yet broken. I still loved him desperately, for the sake of ceremony. I didn't tell him immediately. I planned to surprise him on our first wedding anniversary, but that day, I waited alone by the cake for so long. And he never came back. In the thunderstorm, his phone was completely unreachable. Heartbroken and anxious, I clutched my phone, praying for his safety. I waited until midnight when he finally returned, reeking of alcohol. "Vanessa." He lay on the sofa, muttering to himself, staring fixedly at the butterfly on the ceiling. I thought he was confused and went to help him up. "Honey, let's go rest." "You're not Vanessa." "Of course I'm not. I'm Amelia Sterling," I whispered back, but my answer seemed to hit a nerve. He shoved me violently. I stumbled and fell onto the sofa. "Honey." Holden had never been so rough. I almost cried. He was half sober, looking at me dazedly. A moment later, he slumped down again, swallowing my heartache. I took off his jacket. Amid his muttered "Vanessa." I saw a photo fall from the jacket's inner pocket. It was the first time I saw his white moonlight. A sweet, beautiful girl with a charming smile. On the back, their youthful promise was written. "Holden Kingsley and Vanessa Miller will be happy together forever." In that instant, I felt as if struck by lightning. Why Holden loved butterflies. Why he was fixated on them even when drunk. Simply because the woman he loved was named Vanessa. I didn't speak of that night to anyone. The next day, I hired a detective to investigate everything thoroughly. When I saw that the girl named Vanessa died on the same day as our wedding anniversary, I understood what it meant to be plunged into an ice cellar. That girl's entire life was in the few thin papers in my hand. Her heart was still beating in my chest. Finally, I lost control, collapsing over the desk, crying my heart out. At that moment, I finally understood why Holden married me. When I stumbled into the tub later, disoriented, I didn't even notice the blood flowing steadily. By the time I called for help, that small life was forever gone, and I, dragging my sick body home, found only Holden sitting leisurely on the sofa. In his hands were the documents I had gathered about the woman he loved. From that night on, Holden shed his disguise. He cursed me madly, locked me in the villa, cut off all contact with the outside world. He confiscated my phone. Every time my father or brother called, I could only answer under his watchful eye. He said I must atone because I had stolen his beloved's life. Without my knowledge, he had come to hate me so much he wished me to die without a grave later. He got his wish, but why? Why wasn't he happy? Now, Holden held the prenatal report, shaking with anger. It said 7 weeks. The fetus was no bigger than a peanut bud, barely visible in the blurry ultrasound image. That was my child, I could feel its heartbeat, but Holden couldn't. Why did he also hurt so much that teardrops as big as beans fell on the paper, blurring the child's last image? Find the Millers. Holden ground out the order to his assistant through clenched teeth. Perhaps he still couldn't believe the truth contradicted everything he'd held as fact. Needing to dig up the past completely, I called this behavior self-flagellation. The damage was already hard to undo. Did he really need to hear it a second time? I was already dead. What good was clearing my name now? I sat beside him, thinking with a sigh. If only he had realized a little earlier, I would never have loved him, never walked toward death. But I knew the puzzle between us had no solution, except mutual destruction. The Millers hadn't gone far. They bought a villa in another city, living the life of the nouveau rich. When Holden found them, they were too terrified to breathe. I want an explanation about Vanessa Miller's heart donation 2 years ago. Holden spoke through gritted teeth. The Millers' faces darkened, probably knowing Holden's visit meant he'd learned something. That girl, she was honored to contribute to the family. Thud. A chair slammed into Mr. Miller. Holden went berserk, smashing things at him recklessly. She was your daughter. Your own daughter. I watched coldly from the side. Holden himself came from a poor family, but he was a son. He didn't understand that in some people's minds, a daughter wasn't worth as much as tens or hundreds of thousands. Holden trashed the Miller home. Under threat and coercion, they finally spilled the truth from years ago. The Millers were poor, with a daughter and a son close in age, both at schooling age. Once, the couple overheard a doctor at the hospital worrying about my case, so they hatched a plan, faked Vanessa's accident. Through a middleman, they donated her heart to me, receiving my father's $10 million compensation, with the whole truth revealed. Holden dragged his exhausted body back to the hillside villa. This time, he was no longer calm and composed. The villa was mostly emptied. All traces of my life were gone. He lay back on the sofa. Only that butterfly chandelier could offer him some memory. Actually, after the truth came out, we had a period of twisted coexistence. He would curse me through clenched teeth one moment, then comfort me when I was hurt the next. I couldn't grasp his psychology, so I tread carefully, twisted, yet desperate, continuing as his wife. And now, I felt my being gradually fading. Perhaps only deep obsession kept me here. Now that I was cleared, with no more obsessions, I shouldn't exist. Tomorrow would be my 7th day. I hoped tonight would be my last night by his side. The last night seemed uneventful. Holden went to shower as usual. I sat not far away, fiddling with a pot of flowers I loved in life. Amelia. I suddenly heard him call me. My body froze. Only when no second call came did I relax. Holden had forgotten his clothes. In the past, one call from him and I'd bring them, along with the sweet honey. Now, only empty air answered him. I didn't push the door open, standing unhappily outside. I knew him calling my name was just a withdrawal symptom. When someone gets used to another's presence, losing it suddenly feels awful. The name that slipped out was just a symbol. He didn't truly want to see me. Accepting that, I went back to fiddling with my plants. If Holden came out now and saw the plants trembling without wind, he'd probably think it was haunted. That might be good. I thought I could still scare him, but an hour later, he still hadn't come out. I grew anxious. After enduring a long time, I finally pushed the door open. He lay in the tub, eyes closed, as if asleep, or more like dead. My feelings were complicated as I stood by, debating whether to watch him die or call for help, when his eyes snapped open. Who's there? He shouted at the door. Showering in a house where someone died, the bathroom door suddenly opens. It looked like a scene from a horror movie, but Holden showed no fear. Instead, he called my name. I stood awkwardly to the side, glad he couldn't see me. My eyes wandered and landed on the hair tie I'd left in the bathroom, now clutched tightly in his hand. The mountain night was windy. A gust blew in, bringing a sudden chill. Even a non-corporeal being like me felt my scalp prickle. Holden seemed to come to his senses. He didn't call out again. Silently, he put on his bathrobe and returned to the bedroom. As usual, Holden would heat a glass of milk before bed. That was always my job. He was already in bed, but past the usual milk time, no warm milk arrived. I watched him irritably throw off the covers, stomp to the kitchen, make a racket, then return with a slightly yellowish glass of milk. Holden was so silly. He could even burn milk. Saying that, I felt sad again. The first time I heated milk, I burned it too, but Holden didn't mind at all. He drank the whole pot, said it was caramel-flavored milk. Beaming, I exchanged a caramel-flavored kiss with him. determined to be happy with him forever. The past was too painful to recall. I silently left the room. Soon after, a crisp sound came from the room, and I hurried back to look. In the few minutes I was gone, Holden had thrown some kind of tantrum. He'd flung the glass of milk onto the floor. The wool rug was soaked, the glass rolling under the bed. Such a bad temper, that was my assessment. Holden took a while to calm his heaving chest. He condescended to crouch down. Lying on the floor to retrieve the glass, his slender fingers kept searching. Instead of the glass, they found a rectangular box. My heart leapt into my throat. No. I kept pulling at his hand, to no avail. Don't look. Let my secret remain eternal, I screamed, but he couldn't hear. When he pulled out that shabby box, I knew I was done for. Holden frowned and opened the box. The first thing he took out was a half-knitted baby garment. We didn't have pets, so it must have been for my unborn child. Back when I first learned I was pregnant, overjoyed, I bought yarn and followed an online blogger to learn knitting. Though it was crooked and uneven, I enthusiastically knitted a little blue butterfly into it. I thought Holden would love it too. I never imagined my beautiful dream would shatter in less than a month. Holden already knew about my past pregnancy, so his reaction wasn't huge. He just clenched the little garment tightly. During our time of feigned affection, he had also spoken of hoping for a child between us. I wondered what he felt seeing it now. I waited nervously for his reaction. But sadly, he didn't show much. He just silently relaxed his grip and neatly folded it. He continued digging. The box held several basketball game tickets. His photo was printed on them. He paused, taking out each one to look. Different dates. I hadn't missed a single game he played in. I had never told him about this. In college, I watched many of his games. Wearing the purple and white number 7 jersey, he was the tallest, most handsome on the court. I had quite the crush on him back then. That's why, when we met again, I fell for him so quickly. Silly, Holden scoffed, then tossed the tickets aside. I admitted I was pretty silly, or I wouldn't have been deceived by him for so long. But was Holden any smarter? What did this behavior amount to? Was it clever to meticulously uncover my schoolgirl crush? He continued, when his fingers touched an envelope. The scornful look on his face vanished completely, and my heart climbed to its peak. It was a letter in a pink envelope, my ungiven sincerity from over a decade ago. He held his breath, quickly opening it, his hands trembling uncontrollably. I thought he might remember, because he hated pink, and I had defiantly given him a pink letter. Together, Holden and I read the letter my teenage self wrote to him. Holden probably never knew I noticed him back in high school. I was well loved by my parents back then, a bit chubby and not particularly striking. He was poor but academically brilliant, always popular because of his good looks. Young people never cared much about social standing, so I became one of the many who liked him. I had a crush on him for 3 years. Finally, at graduation, I mustered the courage to stop him on the way home from school. I offered him this pink love letter, hoping he'd consider me. He just chuckled lightly and told me to go away. I stubbornly tried to give him the letter. He frowned, took it, and threw it in the trash. He walked off coolly. When I ran after him, I saw a girl take his hand, so he already had a girlfriend. All the courage I'd mustered vanished from that moment. That undelivered letter, I fished out of the trash later. I developed a heart condition and nearly died. But at 20, I received his first love's heart and gained a new life. A love letter from years past wasn't a big deal, just a youthful regret. Holden's trembling hand sealed it back up. Pretending he'd seen nothing, I regretted it terribly. I should have burned it all before I died. Why leave behind such embarrassing things? Even after my death, he didn't react much, making me seem more like a clown. Embarrassed, I walked out and curled up on the sofa. Holden didn't sleep that night either. At midnight, he pushed open the door, took the overcoat from that day, and went out. I had no choice but to be dragged out with him in the middle of the night again. When we arrived, I realized his friend had invited him for a drink, Mr. Kingsley. Long time no see. Just entering the private room, his friend teased him with a smile. When we were married, I disliked him going to such places, so I'd always throw a fit to make him come home. Because of this, my reputation among his friends wasn't great. Holden didn't speak. He picked up a glass of liquor and downed it in one go, earning cheers. Boss is on fire. Isn't the missus keeping you in check today? They probably didn't know about my death yet. Joking without a care, from the shadows, I quietly observed Holden's expression. He put down his glass like nothing was wrong, even managing a faint smile. Why bring her up? She's still mad, haven't smoothed things over yet, lying without batting an eye. No wonder he achieves so much at a young age. He could have casually said she's dead, don't mention her, avoiding further teasing, but he didn't. So when his friend pressed later, it almost got awkward. The missus might keep you on a tight leash, but her care for you is undeniable. Listen to me, couples fight but make up, go back, apologize, admit you were wrong. Everything will be like before. She won't listen. How's that possible? His friend retorted, but seeing his expression, shut his mouth. Holden said no more. His friend didn't ask further. The two drank in silence until a tipsy man stumbled over. Mr. Kingsley, the rings your wife commissioned from my wife are finished. It's been so long. No one's come to pick them up. Can't reach her either. I brought them today. Please take them back. A golden brocade box was placed before Holden. His blurred eyes tried to focus. Finally, irritably, he took the box and opened it. Inside was a pair of exquisite diamond rings, patterned like butterfly wings. I designed them myself. Seeing them in physical form after death was a kind of luck. Our original wedding rings had been thrown away during a fight and never replaced. After much thought, I designed this pair myself. Never expected to see them like this. The two rings refracted colorful light in the dim, smoky bar. I couldn't help but reach out to touch, but my fingers passed through nothing. Mr. Kingsley, are you okay? Someone asked cautiously. Holden suddenly stood up, kicked the table in frustration, and left the place despite everyone's calls. Holden rummaged through cabinets. I sat and watched him for 15 minutes. Not that there was much to rummage through, since the place was basically emptied. Assistant Zhang, where are the things in the cabinet? Holden bombarded his assistant with a call at 3 a.m. The assistant, groggy with sleep, replied, Mr. Kingsley, you said to clear everything out. That one sentence made Holden calm down again. The assistant came and left. Bewildered, Holden slumped to the floor, just staring blankly at the two diamond rings. Impossible. Amelia Sterling. Don't think you can affect me even after death. He pinned a huge blame on me. Furious, thinking of his insane behavior, I deflated again. I really wanted to know what he was looking for, but I couldn't ask, so I just sat on the floor with him. He seemed out of his mind, staring at the rings as if trying to see through them. After a while, as if remembering something, he rushed to the kitchen. The fridge contents hadn't been dealt with yet. The heart-shaped puffs I made were shoved in the farthest corner. Without tasting, you knew they were expired. The hearts were unrecognizable. The cream reeked of spoilage, but Holden didn't seem to notice. He stuffed the puffs into his mouth. When he couldn't stuff anymore, he ran to the sink and vomited. I watched, stunned. Then I heard him call my name with vicious intensity. Amelia Sterling. You are not allowed to die. I never thought the brain dead after death literature I read online could become reality. In the middle of the night, Holden went to a waste station. A billionaire CEO, like a beggar, rummaged through garbage with his subordinates. He said he was looking for 2 rings, 3-carat diamonds, engraved with our names. From the description, they were our wedding rings. During some fight, we'd thrown them into the pond by the entrance. Don't know when he fished them out and kept them. Mr. Kingsley found them. A worker presented them to Holden like a lifeline. Holden's hands trembled as he took them. Gritting my teeth, I blew a breath. He fumbled, and a ring rolled into a drain. No. He went mad, yanking at the drain cover, determined to retrieve it. I was even more dumbfounded. I'm gone. So why is he pretending to be so deeply in love? The news of Holden causing a scene at the waste station spread everywhere that night, but he paid no mind, clutching that ring as he fell asleep. Less than 12 hours remained until I left this world. At 9 the next morning, just as the funeral home opened, Holden appeared at the entrance. He strode over to the director who was unlocking the door. Tell her I've forgiven her, huh? The director was baffled, but professionalism made him hold back a look of disbelief, offering a polite smile instead. Who are you referring to? Where is Amelia Sterling? He grabbed the director's collar violently, probably because the ash scattering incident was so shocking. The director remembered the name well. Ms. Sterling was cremated on the 29th of last month. I already gave you the ashes. Impossible. She's not dead. Holden's eyes were wide with fury, demanding the funeral home give me back. I watched, amused. In a few hours, even my soul would vanish. And he was still demanding my return. The farce ended with security intervening. Holden began wandering aimlessly again. Finally, he wandered back home. I could hardly imagine his feelings now. Why did he think I wasn't dead? I only felt myself growing lighter and lighter, so light a breeze could blow me away. Holden paced the house irritably, calling my name in every corner, getting no response. He smashed this and that. Only when there was nothing left to break did he seem to wake up. He called his assistant with a request that made me curse his insanity. Why else would he demand his assistant find him a reliable medium as fast as possible? The person he wanted arrived quickly. Reputedly, this medium was truly powerful, could commune with spirits, even converse with me. Entering, he waved a feather whisk around Holden. The laughable thing was, I stood right beside him, and he didn't see me at all. What kind of medium was this? Young man, you have a departed one by your side. Holden's face darkened. I nervously stopped moving, however. She is unwilling to see you. This old man can do nothing, huh? This old guy understood me. Why won't she see me? She has unfinished wishes in that QA. The old man read my thoughts clearly. So clearly I almost thought he was a plant by my brother. Holden fell silent. Only after the medium left did he instruct his assistant to restore all the Sterling family's assets. For me, this was tremendous news. If I owed anyone, it was my family. Now my wish was fulfilled. I could leave in peace. Less than an hour remained. I had completed all my wishes. Soon I should be able to vanish, leaving this world, maybe even reincarnate if lucky, start a new life. I looked forward to this day, hoping never to meet someone like Holden again. This second death was easier to accept than the last. I could even happily say goodbye to each plant. Holden had just finished a heated call with my brother, but at least everything was settled. My brother demanded I be buried in the Sterling family plot. Holden said in your dreams, I was his even in death. I let them argue. My ashes were already scattered across the mountains. No matter how powerful they were, they couldn't them back. Where I was buried didn't matter. What mattered was I was free. Happily, I sat on the sofa, legs crossed, quietly awaiting my second demise. I even leaned over the table, sipping tea, completely unaware Holden's gaze had shifted from confusion to shock. I fiddled with a little teapot, about to pinch it, when someone grabbed my hand. Amelia. I turned my head, startled. I saw my hand materialize. I stared in disbelief at myself, and at Holden, whose hand tightly grasped mine. That medium really had some skills. The moment my wish was fulfilled, Holden truly saw me. He hugged me frantically, with a force that seemed to want to crush me into his body. Amelia, you're back. Don't go. Don't leave, okay? Though I had guessed his feelings for me had changed, hearing the word love from him still shocked me for a long moment. You dare speak of love? I pushed him away. But I don't love you anymore. Holden froze, his bright eyes filling with tears, so he could cry too. When he cried, he wasn't much different from me. Eyes brimming like open floodgates, tears streaming endlessly. This was the first time I saw him cry, likely the last. I'm already dead, I reminded him mercilessly. You're not. You came back. Deluded. He held my hand, sobbing uncontrollably before me. He said he loved me, never truly wanted me dead. He wanted revenge on my family but couldn't bear ending things with me. He said he'd fallen in love with me long ago, just didn't dare admit it. Love and hate were separated by a thin line. Once the hate was gone, only endless love remained. I just let him hold me, saying nothing. Holden cried for a long time, and less than 2 minutes remained until I vanish. He pulled out the custom ring from somewhere, tearfully pleading. I got the ring. Let me put it on you, okay? Faced with his vulnerability, I found I still couldn't be completely indifferent. After a few seconds of thought, I agreed readily. Okay. Smiling, I extended my hand, offering my gentlest smile. Holden sniffled, gently kissed my hand, then began the motion, trembling. He slipped the ring onto my finger. It almost reached the base, but my body could hold on no longer. Goodbye, Holden, I whispered in his ear. No. He lunged forward, and I, smiling, dissolved into nothingness before him. The ring sparkled, falling to the floor. Amelia. Holden cried heart-wrenchingly, no longer the confident man from before. He lunged forward. Even a cliff couldn't stop him. Fortunately, bodyguards acted quickly, preventing a tragedy. I knew he would never forget me, though that wasn't important. I only hoped he'd treat my family well. Carrying his guilt for me, I completely dissipated from this world, following the wind, rivers, and rain, traveling the world. From then on, wherever I went, I left my mark. When we were in love, I told him I wanted to travel the world. Never thought I'd achieve it only after death. At the very last moment, I heard him say he loved me again, I heard, but didn't respond, just smiled and turned into a wisp of breeze. That breeze brushed past Holden's fingers. My final farewell to him. Don't die. I love you, he muttered like a madman at the cliff's edge. So this was also the year he loved me most. A pity I was already gone.